similar to and different from the others. And then discussion should initially be focused on how specific cultural differences can be overcome, as well as even leveraged, given the added complexity of distance. In conclusion, time is an intangible concept that is defined culturally, economically, and even politically in quite different terms around the world. Even with the dynamics of globalization permeating our societies today, we don't yet have a common protocol for managing and utilizing time around the world. We must therefore learn to understand and adapt to each other's time protocols, clearly understanding the contrasting monochronic and polychronic views of time so that we can use it as a true asset, not a liability, in all our productive activities and global collaboration within teams, organizations, and communities. This asset is increasingly the differentiator of success for many individuals and organizations today. Thank you and goodbye.
We will now continue with our second question and answer session. I believe we have a caller from Federación Nacional de Comerciantes in Medellín, Colombia. Your question, please.
Muchas gracias. Buenos días.
Buenos días.
If we start from the premise that every individual is unique, it doesn't matter if that individual comes from a monochronic or a polychronic society. We can say that there isn't a good or a wrong way to manage time, that is. The person has to be productive. It doesn't matter what the person does, but how he or she feels using that time. So we have to point our direction to the end and not so much to the time in terms of quality of life. So the question is, can we achieve some sort of balance in the societies to really face the day-to-day activities? What would be your concept on this?
So is the bottom line productivity and whether people feel good about it, or is the bottom line staying on time?
What a great question for our speaker from Finalco. It's a great question, and it's the one, I guess, that I started out with saying how this globalization is making our life so complex. Those of us in monochronic cultures have gotten too focused on time, such that now our job lives really run our lives. And now the issue here is to create more balance. I think the issue in more polychronic cultures may be how to put more emphasis on maybe getting the task accomplished and maybe less on the working to live aspect. So I think both kinds of cultures are now facing unique problems to find balance. And nobody has a really good answer how we make that happen. I think it may start in the schools as we educate each other about how to focus, in the case of the United States and in monochronic cultures, more on the aspects of life, and maybe in polychronic cultures more on the aspects of productivity and efficiency.
Okay. We have another caller from Matipaca in Mexico. And come in, please, from Nayarit.
Muy buenos días.
Buenos días.
We would like to ask two questions related to Module 2. If we consider the cost and benefit for the organizations, what is better in terms of organizations that have different offices in different countries, that is face-to-face meetings or distance meetings, or a mixture in terms of first world countries? If we consider that polychronic cultures are much more flexible in terms of due dates for certain objectives, and if we take into consideration polychronic societies, we can then maybe see that this is a waste of time. What do you think?
I think I alluded to this in the segment just prior to this question and answer session. My experience is, and many of the people who deal with virtual teams, particularly when those teams have membership from both polychronic and monochronic cultures, is that there needs to be a mixture of face-to-face time and time spent just on email and telephone conversations. The experience is if you just rely on virtual meetings using email and phone conversations, things can go wrong. People need to know each other well enough that they trust each other so that when things go wrong, those problems will be worked out rather than pointing fingers and accusing people who are causing the problems of stereotypes and prejudices that just hinder activity. So my experience is there needs to be a mixture. And most consultants, I think, would argue that any virtual team needs to spend time at the very beginning in face-to-face meeting, not so much on getting the task accomplished, but just getting to know each other in what we might call social time, so that the people can develop a level of trust so that they can work more effectively together in a virtual format.
Okay. Now we have a fax that's come into us from the Universidad Autónoma de Chihuahua in Chihuahua, Mexico. And this caller wants to know, could you provide some additional guidance for managing cross-border teams?
Okay, as I indicated, we might call these virtual teams or cross-border teams. There are some issues that maybe I didn't address as directly. The membership of the team is absolutely critical, so that as teams are being put together, as the managers of these systems think about who should be on these teams, probably ought to pay attention to the communication skills of the members of the teams, the interpersonal skills, because both of these will show up in video conferences and audio conferences and even via email, so that people that are on the teams have some basic skills to start with. You don't want the team time to be used helping people develop these skills after the team has already been put together and has a project to work on. So paying attention to those issues up front. And then lastly, I would just say the teams need to be given enough time so that as they do interact, whether it's in a virtual format or in face-to-face format, that they can work through all of the problems that will occur because of differences in culture.
All right, we have a caller now from La Habana, Cuba, from Siena Internet. Your question, please. Welcome.
Hola, buenos días a todos.
We would like to ask, we know in terms of time management, knowledge and language issues are very important. What could you recommend in terms of when one issue is interpreted by several translators, and how could then this have an impact on time management?
All right, so translations in time.
Yeah, translation takes time, as we all know. And it also can lead to potential misunderstandings if the translation isn't done accurately or effectively. One of my recommendations to people that work in different cultures is to make sure they have their own translator, to not rely on the other side's translators, so that they have some control over the nature of the translation. There are always issues of the accuracy of the translation. If we're translating documents, they probably need to be what's called back translated to ensure that the translation is accurate. The back translation should end up with the same results as the original document. But this might also be true even with verbal translation, like the translation of this program here, although you can't do that when you've got simultaneous translation.
Yeah. Now, another question that frequently comes up across cultures, different cultures seem to start the day at different times a day. There's this saying in America, early to bed, early to rise, makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. Old saying going back to the days of the foundations of America. Other countries start late, they work late, take siestas? How do people with different time orientations come to understand another culture and work according to their rhythms?
Yeah, what a great question. All of us who have lived in one culture or grown up in one culture and moved and worked in a different culture with a different use of time has run into this issue. I tend to be an early morning person, and my time in Spain or in Mexico with eating dinner at 10 or 11 o'clock at night has caused problems more than once. There's no easy answer to this. I think it works in both directions. People from Spain or Latin America who come to the United States need to adjust to the time patterns in the United States, and people from the United States who go to Latin America or Spain need to make that adjustment as well.
And we start pretty early here in the United States.
Tend to start early. In fact, there is a reward given, if you will, or recognition given to the person who gets into work early, who is effective early, doesn't spend an hour or two getting oriented to work, who works hard during the day, and in fact almost a negative reaction to those who have to work late because they have not gotten their work done on time. Let me throw in one other issue that I think we haven't addressed, and that's just that technology itself is forcing on everybody probably some level of monochronic culture. Manufacturing machines have to operate 24 hours a day. They can't take a 2-hour siesta in the middle of the afternoon. Banks that operate around the world have to be open in the middle of the afternoon and can't take a siesta. There are other kinds of businesses that are just forcing the employees, no matter what country they're located in, to work on the schedule that the technology requires. And even though, just in terms of my own personal values, I find it hard to accept that technology is forcing a common culture around the world, I think that is indeed what's happening.
Now, one of the things that is true of America, and I think of many European countries, is that if you arrive, say, for a lunch meeting, you're expected to be on time, but if it's within 5, 10, maybe even 15 minutes, that's okay. Is that different in different parts of the world? Are there longer waiting times? Is it expected that waiting is okay?
Certainly there are, and indeed in some polychronic cultures in the Middle East, if your other party doesn't even show up, it's okay. If it just would be accepted that something more important, a family problem.
A bit disconcerting for an American, to say the least.
Very disconcerting because we don't expect it and we're not prepared for it. Although in some cultures, Japanese culture comes to mind, if something is scheduled to start at 12 o'clock, if it starts at 12:01, it is late.
Yeah.
Even in America, 5 minutes or 10 minutes would be okay.
Okay. But the Japanese often have tea or drinks or do small talk in a business meeting for a very long period of time.
Yes.
And Americans sometimes wonder, when are we going to get down to business here?
Yes. Very, very good point. And it has to do with built into the Japanese culture and many other cultures, even though they may be oriented towards starting things on time and ending them on time, they also are very what we call relationship oriented. So much time is spent on building relationships, where again in the U.S. culture, relationships are less important, so we don't want to spend time.
So Americans have to be sensitive to this in some other cultures, where building the relationship and building trust is very important.
And thus we have to put into our own schedules the time it takes to do that.
Well, thank you so much for your excellent insights, Dennis, and thank you so much, audience, for your excellent questions. We've run out of time, ironically. We hope that you've enjoyed participating once again in this exciting multilingual and multinational program. Before we go, we would like to invite our ITC associates to participate in our 8th annual meeting of network members, which will be held on January 14th, 15th, and 16th in San Diego, San Francisco, and Sacramento. For more information or to register, contact the ITC at info@itcgroup, all one word, .org. We would like to inform you that ITC's new book, Productivity with a Global Flair, is now available for purchase through the ITC website, or directly from ITC for lot purchases of 30 or more copies, particularly for video conference participants interested in the annual series certificate or diploma. We invite you to participate in the 9th video conference for this year's series, Strategies for Competitive Performance, airing September 25th, 2003, and entitled The New Multicultural Knowledge Manager, Beyond Diversity Training and Language Competence. For additional information on this video conference series, please consult your participant's manual, where you will find the dates and the specific topics for each program. For more information, you may visit our website, itc-group.org. On behalf of all of us, I thank you for your ongoing participation and interest in this program. Thank you, muchas gracias, y hasta luego.